Both President Trump and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi are pushing to have a coronavirus relief package approved in the near future. According to the president's top economic advisor, President Trump has approved a revised coronavirus stimulus package. This announcement comes just days after Mr. Trump called for his administration to stall negotiations until after the election. The president took to Twitter saying, quote, "COVID relief negotiations are moving along, go big." However, the details of the package are currently unknown. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin is expected to meet with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi later today to discuss the White House's approved plan. Pelosi has said she hopes to have a deal done with the administration soon, but there are questions as to whether or not Congress will agree with the administration's proposal. CBS News chief congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes joins me now to discuss. Hi, Nancy. So there's been a rather crazy back and forth in Washington over a coronavirus relief bill. The president now says Congress needs to find a way to come to terms on the next stimulus package. So can you bring us up to speed on the latest on the negotiations?
Sure. I mean, there's been a lot of back and forth between the president and himself. Remember, just a couple of days ago, he was tweeting very dramatically that he had told his negotiators to walk away, to cut off negotiations until after the election. Now, just a couple of days later, not only is he saying that these talks are back on, but that he wants to go big, even bigger somehow than what Democrats have been asking for. That's something that he just said to Rush Limbaugh on the radio this afternoon, that he wants even more money in this package than Democrats do. That is likely to come as a massive surprise to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who has been pushing a $2.2 trillion stimulus package. Our understanding is that the package being pushed by the White House now, and as you pointed out, we don't know all the details, is worth about $1.8 trillion. So it is not bigger than what Nancy Pelosi wants, at least not right now. But who knows where the president will be a couple of hours from now. Nevertheless, Speaker Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Mnuchin have been talking, are scheduled to talk again today, and both of them say that they very much want a deal. So they are getting closer together. Let's see if they can close that final gap.
But Nancy, is it clear to you at this point what Democrats, Republicans, or the president want to see in a stimulus bill at this point?
Look, if Speaker Pelosi cuts an agreement with Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, Democrats, by and large, are going to be behind it. They are going to support it. We have seen that repeatedly. She has her caucus behind her. The big question mark is Senate Republicans, who have made it clear from the very beginning they have no appetite for another big spending bill. They didn't even want the $1.5, $1.6 trillion that the White House was initially proposing. It's hard to see them getting behind a package that is even bigger than that. And that's why just today, the Republican leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, was kind of downplaying expectations and saying he doesn't think that any big agreement is likely before the election. That was kind of a switch from what he had been saying a couple of days ago. He's clearly been trying to pump the brakes here, because if Speaker Pelosi and Secretary Mnuchin do end up cutting a deal, then he's going to have to be the one to decide whether he's willing to put something on the Senate floor that a majority of his own Republican members can't support. That is a very tricky position for him to be in just a couple of weeks before the election.
Absolutely. So let's talk about one of those particular Republicans. Senator Mitch McConnell originally supported the president's move to back out of negotiations on a stimulus deal. But now, apparently, Senator McConnell is saying we do need additional aid. What more do we know specifically about his stance on a COVID relief package?
His stance is that he supports some aid, but he knows that many Republicans in the Senate don't want to spend nearly as much as the deal that is coming together right now. And he wants to protect them from having to take a tough or embarrassing vote. So he's now saying, yes, he does think that there will be a deal, but that he doesn't think that it will happen before the election. So he is very clearly trying to pump the brakes here.
So, on a separate topic, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Maryland Representative Jamie Ruskin have introduced a bill to create a commission on presidential capacity, which would be tasked with monitoring the physical and mental health of the commander-in-chief. How would this commission work exactly, and how would it be expected to determine whether or not a president is fit for office?
Well, they say that this is a panel that is basically allowed for in the Constitution. The 25th Amendment does say that Congress can set up some kind of body to assess whether the president, in conjunction with the vice president, of course, is able to fulfill his duties, either temporarily or more long term. And so what Speaker Pelosi and Congressman Raskin are proposing is a commission of individuals made up of both medical experts and former dignitaries from both parties. People who would be appointed by both sides would be independent and would look at the available information and work in conjunction with the vice president to determine whether the president was able to continue serving in that capacity, or whether for the short term or long term he needed to be replaced by the vice president or some other individual. Now, Speaker Pelosi argued that this has nothing to do with the current president, that this is something that they would set up for the future. But she argued that what we saw in the last few days, the president getting sick from COVID, raised concerns about what do you do if a president has a stroke, or is this in some other way unexpectedly incapacitated and cannot make a decision for himself or herself, what should be done, what the chain of command should be. And so this is something that they are pushing. It's obviously not going to happen anytime soon. We're just a couple of weeks away from an election, but they want to get that idea in the bloodstream. And of course, they want to keep this storyline about the president's recent erratic behavior alive as we get even closer to the election.
All right, Nancy Cordes in Washington, thank you so much.
You're welcome.